Hello everyone, and welcome to the Fictional Vortex. So we are back with an interesting movie on what if Naruto was the mortal prodigy, the first to achieve Angelic power, Naruto x Marcarita, Dragon Ball Super. But before we start, I just want to remind you to please subscribe to my channel and hit the like button if you enjoy my content. Let's start the story. Chapter 1. Resonance. The kunai sliced through the morning mist, its trajectory perfect despite the limited visibility. Naruto Uzumaki stood motionless on the branch, his breath controlled to AR imperceptibility as three more kunai followed the first in rapid succession. Four thuds confirmed direct hits on targets invisible to ordinary eyes. Still showing off after all these years, Shik. Amaru's drawl carried through the fog as it began to thin. We're supposed to be gathering intelligence, not announcing our presence. Naruto dropped from the branch, landing without disturbing a single leaf. At 23, he'd grown into his power with a quiet confidence that had replaced his childhood bombast. The black and orange Jonin uniform fit him like a second skin, his movements fluid and economical. "Those sentries would have spotted us in another 30 seconds, he replied, gesturing toward four shadow clones dragging unconscious bodies into the underbrush. They were changing patrol patterns. Someone's nervous. Shikamaru raised an eyebrow but nodded. The mission to investigate unusual activity along the border between Fire and Earth countries had already yielded concerning findings. Mercenaries with advanced weaponry had been gathering, their purpose still unclear. Fair enough. Your sensing abilities have gotten scary accurate lately. Shikamaru studied his friend with calculating eyes. Almost like you're seeing things before they happen. Naruto shrugged, uncomfortable with the observation despite its accuracy. For weeks now, his perceptions had been shifting. Colors seemed more vivid, sounds clearer, and sometimes, in moments of perfect focus, he could sense intentions and movements before they manifested. Kurama's getting restless, he offered as explanation. Though the fox had been unusually quiet about these new developments. Something about the energy in this region feels wrong. They continued through the forest toward the reported mercenary encampment. Mist clung to the valleys between ancient trees, creating a landscape of islands floating in a pearl-white sea. As they approached their destination, Naruto felt a familiar pressure building behind his eyes, the precursor to what he'd privately begun calling clarity moments. He stopped, raising a hand to signal Shikamaru. Wait. The world around him suddenly seemed to slow and sharpen. The forest gained impossible definition. He could see the intricate patterns of bark 20 meters away, count individual dewdrops on distant spider webs, and somehow perceive the flow of chakra through the earth beneath them. More disturbingly, he glimpsed something else. Thin lines of unfamiliar energy crisscrossing the landscape like a vast geometric web, pulsing with cool blue light that shouldn't exist. "There's a trap ahead," he said, blinking as reality settled back into its normal parameters. Not chakra-based. Something different. Shikamaru didn't question him. Parameters. 50 meters diameter. Centered on that clearing. Naruto pointed through the trees. I can't explain how I know, but triggering it would do more than just alert them. It feels wrong. Naruto created a shadow clone and sent it forward, controlling it to move precisely along a path he somehow knew would avoid the trigger mechanisms. When the clone reached the center of the clearing, it froze. "Shikamaru." The clone called back, voice tight with tension. "You need to see this." They navigated the trap using Naruto's inexplicable guidance, joining the clone in the clearing's center. There, etched into the ground with precision that no human tool could achieve, was an enormous geometric pattern. Concentric circles intersected with triangles and hexagons, creating a design that seemed to shift and move when viewed from different angles. "What the hell?" Shikamaru knelt, careful not to touch the lines. "I've never seen fuinjutsu like this. It's not from any known shinobi tradition." "It's not fuinjutsu," Naruto said with absolute certainty, though he couldn't explain how he knew. "It's something older, more fundamental." The design pulsed once with that same blue light Naruto had glimpsed earlier. And a jolt of energy shot through him like lightning. He gasped, dropping to one knee as something inside him resonated in response. Something beyond his chakra, beyond even Kurama's power. For an instant, he felt connected to something vast and incomprehensible. Naruto. Shikamaru was at his side instantly, concern breaking through his usual composure. I'm fine. Naruto stood, though the strange resonance continued to vibrate through his being. But we need to report this immediately. Whatever they're planning here goes beyond a simple border dispute. As he spoke, a droplet of blood fell from his nose, sizzling when it touched the geometric pattern. The entire design flared with blinding light, and the forest around them went deathly silent. That's probably bad, Shikamaru deadpanned, already forming hand signs for his shadow possession jutsu. The air rippled like heat waves over desert sand, and a figure stepped through what appeared to be a tear in reality itself. Tall and elegant, with pale blue skin and white hair arranged in an elaborate updo, she carried a staff topped with a floating sphere. Her eyes, holding ancient wisdom and faint amusement, fixed immediately on Naruto. How interesting, she said, her voice melodious yet carrying undertones that seemed to resonate at frequencies beyond human hearing. A mortal with resonant energy. That hasn't happened in, several million years. Shikamaru's shadow shot toward her, but passed through her form as though she were merely an illusion. She didn't even acknowledge the attempt. Who are you? Naruto demanded, instinctively drawing on Kurama's chakra. The familiar golden energy surrounded him, but as it did, it began to take on a bluish tinge where it interfaced with the geometric pattern beneath his feet. The woman's eyes widened slightly, the first indication that anything could surprise her. My name is Marcarita, attendant to the god of destruction Belmont of Universe 11. She tilted her head, studying the altered chakra cloak with clinical interest. Though I suspect those titles mean nothing to you in this isolated little pocket dimension. Before either shinobi could respond, 6 mercenaries burst into the clearing, weapons drawn. Their appearances varied wildly, some looking human, others bearing features that marked them as decidedly not from any known nation. The resonance has been triggered, shouted one with scaled skin and vertical pupils. Secure the mortal vessel before. He stopped abruptly, paling at the sight of Marcarita. An angel, how? The barriers should have. Your primitive interdimensional cloaking would hardly keep me out once a direct resonance was established, Marcarita replied with dismissive elegance. She turned to Naruto. These individuals appear to have been expecting your arrival, or at least someone with your particular energy signature. Curious. The mercenaries attacked in perfect synchronization, but moved with unnatural speed. 2 flanked right while 3 moved left, with their leader hanging back. Naruto registered that they were using a formation designed to counter Konoha's standard Jonin response tactics. They've studied us, Shikamaru warned, already adapting his strategy. Naruto didn't bother with standard tactics. The clarity had returned, stronger than before, and he could see just the mercenaries, movements but the very flow of energy through their bodies. Without conscious thought, he moved into spaces that existed between moments, his strikes targeting points where familiar energy clustered in their bodies. The first 2 dropped instantly, their nervous systems overloaded. The third managed to pull what looked like a metal rod from his belt, which hummed with energy that distorted the air around it. Naruto shifted sideways, evading the swing not based on where it was but where it would be, then struck the man's forearm with 2 fingers. The rod clattered to the ground as the mercenary screamed, his entire arm crystallizing from the point of contact outward, becoming transparent like glass before shattering into dust. Naruto stared at his hand in shock. That wasn't any technique he knew. Shikamaru had immobilized the remaining fighters with his shadow stitching technique, but his eyes were fixed on Naruto. What the hell was that? I have no idea, Naruto admitted, looking to Marcarita who was observing with detached interest. What's happening to me? Your energy is harmonizing with celestial wavelengths, she explained as though discussing the weather. Quite unprecedented for a mortal, especially one with no formal introduction to the cosmic hierarchies. She tapped her staff once on the ground, and the remaining mercenaries froze completely, suspended in time. Now, I suggest we continue this conversation somewhere more private. Your village is about to come under attack by forces similar to these, but considerably more powerful. Konoha. Naruto stepped toward her. How do you know that? Who are you really? I told you who I am, she replied with mild irritation. And I know because the resonance pattern that flared your blood touched this array was designed to trigger a coordinated attack on multiple dimensional focal points. Your village sits on one of the most significant nexus points in this universe. Shikamaru moved to Naruto's side. We can't trust her. No, Naruto agreed, but I can feel she's telling the truth about Konoha. The resonance inside him had intensified, and somehow he could sense I stand disturbances, like tremors before an earthquake, but affecting reality itself. We need to go, now. Marcarita smiled faintly. Good instincts. Your perception is already expanding. She raised her staff. Shall we? The sky above Konoha fractured like breaking glass. Cracks of brilliant blue light spread across the firmament, widening to reveal a swirling darkness beyond. Citizens stopped in their tracks. Faces upturned in confusion and growing terror as the familiar world suddenly seemed paper-thin and fragile. Sakura Haruno had been at the hospital when the phenomenon began. She rushed to the roof for a better view. Medical scrolls still clutched in one hand. Not good, she muttered, watching as the cracks continued to spread. Years of experience had taught her that unprecedented phenomena usually meant unprecedented danger. Her instincts proved correct moments later when the cracks widened further and figures began to descend from the rifts, humanoid but moving with unnatural, jerking motions like poorly controlled puppets. They varied in appearance, some metallic and gleaming, others wrapped in bandages that writhed with minds of their own, and still others OSED of what appeared to be living shadow. Sakura. Kakashi landed beside her, his Hokage robes billowing in the unnatural wind that had begun to howl through the village. Any idea what we're dealing with? Nothing I've ever seen, she admitted. They're not reanimations or summons from any known contract. Their chakra signatures, if that's even what I'm sensing, are completely foreign. Below, the first of the entities had reached the street level. A child approached one curiously before her mother yanked her back. The creature turned toward them, its face splitting horizontally to reveal rows of crystalline teeth. Before it could lunge, a blast of wind chakra slammed it into a wall. Tamari landed in front of the civilians, her fan fully deployed. Get to the shelters, she ordered, already tracking the movements of 3 more creatures converging on her position. The Suna ambassador had been meeting with Kakashi when the sky broke. Across the village, shinobi mobilized with practiced efficiency. But it quickly became apparent that standard techniques had unpredictable effects on the invaders. Fire jutsu caused some to multiply, water techniques seemed to strengthen others, and genjutsu had no effect whatsoever. Coordinate with Shino and Kiba's units, Kakashi instructed Sakura. Focus on evacuation and containment until we understand what we're dealing with. I've sent for Hinata. Her Byakugan might give us insights. What about Naruto? Sakura asked, already calculating casualty projections if the invasion continued to escalate. Still on the border mission with Shikamaru. I've dispatched Anbu to recall them, but Kakashi stopped mid-sentence as a pulse of familiar chakra manifested in the center of the village. Naruto, Shikamaru, and a blue-skinned woman. None of them recognized had appeared beside the Hokage monument, energy swirling around them in patterns that defied natural laws. That was unpleasant, Shikamaru muttered, looking slightly green. From whatever transportation method they'd used. Naruto scanned the village, taking in the broken sky and invading entities with narrowed eyes. The strange clarity had returned, and with it, a deep understanding of what he was seeing. They're not alive, he said with certainty. Not in the way we understand life. They're projections, fragments of consciousness from another plane of existence forced into physical form. Very good, Marcarita commented, seeming genuinely impressed. Your perceptual adaptation is remarkably swift. Kakashi and Sakura landed nearby, both taking defensive positions when they spotted Marcarita. Naruto, report, Kakashi ordered, though his eye never left the blue-skinned woman. Short version. Interdimensional invasion tied to some kind of cosmic energy I'm apparently resonating with. Naruto answered, the glow around him intensifying. This is Marcarita. She's not from around here. Says she's an angel, attendant to the god of destruction, Marcarita corrected primly. The disturbances you're experiencing are the result of an unauthorized attempt to bridge dimensional barriers by a group called the Null Council. They seek a mortal with resonant energy, apparently, him. She nodded toward Naruto. Why? Sakura demanded. To catalyze a reaction that would dissolve the barriers between 12 specific universes, Marcarita explained. ACA. catastrophic outcome that would result in the annihilation of countless life forms and severely disrupt the cosmic balance. A massive explosion rocked the eastern sector of the village. 3 of the invaders had converged, merging into a towering monstrosity that now reached higher than the Hokage monument. Explanations later, Naruto decided, the blue-tinged golden energy of his chakra cloak now extending into 9 massive tails. I need to stop that thing. You need to do considerably more than that, Marcarita interjected, stepping forward with her staff raised. The dimensional breaches must be sealed, or these projections will continue manifesting indefinitely. How? Naruto asked, already gathering nature energy to enter Sage mode alongside Kurama's power. Your resonant energy, properly directed, should theoretically be capable of repairing the breaches. She studied him critically. Though you'll need instruction to avoid making things worse. Another explosion shook the village as the towering entity began absorbing smaller projections, growing with each assimilation. Teach me while we move, Naruto suggested, and without waiting for a response, he launched himself toward the threat. Trusting the self-proclaimed angel to keep up. To his surprise, Marcarita wasn't just keeping pace, she was floating beside him effortlessly, showing no signs of exertion despite matching his enhanced speed. The energy you're accessing comes from what your people would call a higher dimensional plane, she explained as they approached the monstrous entity. It exists beyond the material constraints of any single universe. The creature sensed their approach and swung a massive limb constructed of fused shadow matter. Naruto prepared to evade, but Marcarita simply tapped her staff in the air. The appendage froze mid-swing, caught in what appeared to be a localized time distortion. Your unique chakra has quantum resonance properties similar to divine energy, she continued. Seemingly unconcerned with the battle. To seal the breaches, you must visualize the dimensional fabric as a tapestry and use your energy to reweave the torn sections. Less metaphor, more practical instruction. Naruto called as he formed a massive Rasengan, its usual blue core now shot through with streaks of celestial light. Very well, Marcarita sighed. Direct your focus to the largest breach. She pointed to the widest crack in the sky. Extend your energy not as an attack, but as a bridge connecting the separated edges. Intent matters in celestial mechanics. Naruto launched himself above the frozen creature, directly beneath the largest breach. The foreign energy inside him surged in proximity to the dimensional tear, and instinctively, he understood what Marcarita meant. Rather than forming his chakra into a technique, he allowed it to flow outward in its raw state, visualizing it spanning the broken edges of reality. To his astonishment, the energy responded, stretching into filaments of golden blue light that reached toward the edges of the breach. Where they connected, the cracks began to mend, reality knitting back together like healing skin. Remarkable aptitude, Marcarita observed, appearing beside him. Now, while maintaining that connection, introduce a rotational pattern to stabilize the repair. Naruto added a spiraling motion to the energy, mimicking the core principle of the Rasengan but on a vastly larger scale. The breach responded, the edges pulling together more rapidly as the rotation created a binding effect. Below, freed from Marcarita's time distortion, the monstrous entity roared in what sounded like frustration. It launched itself upward, directly toward Naruto. I can't maintain the seal and fight that thing simultaneously, Naruto gritted out. The strain of manipulating unfamiliar energy already taxing his considerable reserves. You won't need to, a confident voice stated as a figure wreathed in gentle lavender light intercepted the creature. Hinata Hyuga, her Byakugan fully activated, struck the entity with a modified version of the 8 trigrams technique. Instead of targeting chakra points, her strike connected with the very fabric of the projection, disrupting the forced coherence that maintained its physical form. The entity shuddered, its components beginning to separate as Hinata continued her assault with precision and grace that belied the tremendous power behind each strike. Your companion has impressive insight, Marcarita noted. She's instinctively targeting the dimensional anchoring points. Naruto allowed himself a moment of pride before refocusing on the breach. With the immediate threat handled, he poured more energy into the repair, guided by an intuition that seemed to have awakened specifically for this task. The tear sealed completely with a sound like a massive exhalation, and immediately, several of the smaller invaders below disintegrated, their connection to their home dimension severed. One down, Naruto said, already turning toward the next largest breach. 7 remain, Marcarita confirmed, her expression now showing a hint of genuine interest rather than mere clinical observation. Though I suspect you'll manage. You're adapting to celestial energy manipulation faster than any mortal I've observed in the last several million years. Together they moved across the village skyline. Naruto sealing breaches while Konoha's forces dealt with the projections that had already manifested. Hinata kept pace with them, her evolved Byakugan somehow perceiving the dimensional mechanics at work. Each time she struck one of the entities, her eyes glowed with the same bluish energy that now surrounded Naruto. As they approached the final breach, Naruto felt the resonance inside him reach a critical threshold. The foreign energy was no longer separate from his chakra but harmonizing with it, creating something entirely new. His perception expanded exponentially, and suddenly he could see beyond the immediate crisis, glimpsing vast cosmic structures, the flow of energy between dimensions, and the delicate balance that maintained the multiverse. What am I seeing? He gasped, nearly overwhelmed by the influx of information. The beginnings of cosmic awareness, Marcarita replied, and for the first time, she sounded impressed. Most mortals would be driven mad by such perception. Your consciousness is remarkably adaptable. With newfound understanding, Naruto approached the final breach differently. Instead of merely sealing it, he reached deeper, tracing the connection to its source. Through the tear, he glimpsed what appeared to be a massive chamber where robed figures surrounded a pulsing crystal structure. At the center of the group stood a tall, horned being whose eyes widened in shock upon perceiving Naruto's awareness. Impossible, the creature hissed, its voice somehow carrying across dimensional barriers. No mortal vessel should be capable of reverse perception. He is no ordinary mortal, Marcarita stated, floating forward to stand beside Naruto. And you, Zarek, are violating at least 17 cosmic statutes with this incursion. The horned being, Zarek, snarled in response. The era of angels and destroyers dictating cosmic law is ending, Marcarita. The mortal realms deserve representation in the divine hierarchy. Perhaps, she conceded, but not through methods that would collapse reality itself. She turned to Naruto. This final breach is anchored from the other side. To seal it properly, you'll need to sever the connection at its source. Naruto nodded, understanding intuitively what was required. Gathering the harmonized energy within him, he focused it into a thin, concentrated beam that shot through the breach directly toward the crystal structure in the chamber beyond. No, Zarek howled, lunging to intercept, but too late. The beam struck the crystal, which shattered a sound that transcended ordinary hearing, a cosmic chord that resonated across dimensions. The breach collapsed instantly, reality sealing itself with a final, definitive pulse of energy. The sky above Konoha was whole once more, though an iridescent sheen remained for several moments, like oil on water, before fading to normal blue. The remaining projections dissolved, leaving behind only range crystalline dust that evaporated upon contact with the ground. Naruto descended slowly, the extraordinary energy fading from his system though not disappearing entirely. He felt it settle somewhere deep within. Dormant but accessible, Hinata and Marcarita landed beside him as villagers cautiously emerged from shelters and shinobi regrouped to assess damage. What exactly did I just witness? Kakashi asked, approaching with Sakura, Shikamaru, and several Jonin commanders. The first mortal in this universe to channel celestial energy, Marcarita answered, studying Naruto with new interest. A development that will have significant implications. Are they gone for good? Sakura asked, already organizing medical teams to treat the injured. The immediate threat is neutralized, Marcarita confirmed. Though the Null Council will undoubtedly regroup. They've invested too much in this plan to abandon it after one failure. And what exactly is their plan? Shikamaru pressed, his analytical mind already cataloging everything he'd observed. Why target Naruto specifically? Not Naruto specifically, Marcarita clarified. Any mortal with the potential for celestial resonance. Such individuals are extraordinarily rare, perhaps one in several trillion births across all universes. They sought a catalyst for their dimensional merger project, and resonant mortals are the ONL. Why beings capable of surviving the process? Hinata stepped closer to Naruto, her Byakugan still active. His chakra network has changed, she observed with concern. New pathways have formed, carrying energy I've never seen before. A natural adaptation to celestial exposure, Marcarita explained. Though the process would normally take decades of careful training rather than being forced through crisis response. She frowned slightly. There may be complications. As if on cue, Naruto swayed, sudden exhaustion crashing over him. The clarity that had guided his actions faded, replaced by overwhelming fatigue and a piercing headache that felt like his skull might split open. Naruto. Hinata caught him as he stumbled, her touch somehow soothing the worst of the pain. The resonance is still stabilizing, Marcarita observed, tapping her staff once on the ground. A soft blue light enveloped Naruto briefly. He needs rest and proper guidance to integrate these new energies safely. And I suppose you're volunteering for that role? Kakashi asked, his tone making it clear he hadn't decided whether to trust her yet. I am not merely volunteering, Hokage. I am stating a necessity. Marcarita's voice took on a formal quality. By cosmic law, any mortal who demonstrates celestial resonance must receive proper instruction to prevent catastrophic dimensional instability. The alternative would be unpleasant for everyone in this universe. She's telling the truth, Naruto managed, the headache receding slightly as he focused on controlling his breathing. I can feel it, this energy isn't going away, and I have no idea how to control it properly. Hinata's hand tightened on his arm. Then I'm coming too, wherever this training happens. Marcarita raised a delicate eyebrow. That would be highly irregular. Mortals without resonance capabilities typically cannot. She stopped, looking more closely at Hinata with her head tilted. How interesting. Your visual prose has already begun adapting to perceive celestial wavelengths. Perhaps an exception could be made. I need time to discuss this with the council, Kakashi said, though his tone suggested he already recognized the inevitability of the situation. And we need more information about these null council aggressors before making any decisions. Time is a luxury we may not have, Marcarita countered. The resonance event was detectable across multiple universes. Others beyond the null council will have taken notice. Others? Sakura asked. Gods of destruction. Other angels. Entities whose interest you would be wise to avoid. Marcarita turned to Naruto. Some would see your emergence as an opportunity, others as a threat to cosmic order. Naruto straightened, fighting through the fatigue. Give us 3 days, he said, his voice steadier than he felt. We need to secure the village, help the injured, and prepare properly. Then I'll begin whatever training is necessary. Marcarita considered this, then nodded once. 3 days. Though I suggest you use some of that time to begin preliminary exercises to stabilize your energy. She raised her staff, and a small crystalline object cord materialized in the air before floating to Naruto's hand. This will help manage the resonance fluctuations until then. The crystal hummed against his palm, instantly soothing the chaotic energy flows within his body. The headache receded further. How do we know we can trust you? Shikamaru asked bluntly. Marcarita smiled faintly. You don't. But consider this. If I wished this village or this universe harm, I would hardly need elaborate deceptions to accomplish it. She tapped her staff on the ground, and a circular pattern of light formed beneath her feet. 3 days, Naruto Uzumaki. I look forward to seeing what you make of them. With that, she vanished in a column of light that stretched upward into the sky before disappearing entirely. A heavy silence fell over the group, broken finally by Kakashi's dry observation. Well, this complicates the monthly mission report. Despite everything, Naruto found himself laughing, the sound releasing some of the tension that had built throughout the extraordinary day. But as he looked at the crystal in his palm and felt the unfamiliar energy settling into his chakra network, he knew that nothing would be the same again. Whatever cosmic resonance meant, whatever potential it held, he had crossed a threshold that could not be uncrossed. In 3 days, he would begin a journey into realms beyond anything the shinobi world had prepared him for. Hinata's hand found his, her fingers intertwining with his own. Whatever comes next, she said softly, you won't face it alone. The crystal pulsed once between their joined hands, as if in agreement. Its blue light briefly illuminating their faces with an otherworldly glow. In the distance, unseen by any in the village, a slender figure with pale lavender skin and white hair tied in a high ponytail watched with intense interest. Vados, angel attendant to the god of destruction Champa of Universe 6, tapped her staff thoughtfully against her shoulder. So the prophecy begins, she murmured. How fascinating that it should start in such an isolated corner of the multiverse. With a graceful gesture, she opened her own dimensional passage and stepped through, leaving no trace of her observation except a faint scent of ozone in the air. Above Konoha, the sky had returned to normal, but for those with eyes to see, the fabric of reality had changed in subtle, profound ways. The boundaries between worlds had grown just a fraction thinner, and somewhere in the vast expanse of the multiverse, ancient beings had turned their attention to a single mortal whose existence would soon challenge the cosmic order itself. Chapter 1 End Chapter 2, Crossing Thresholds. Dawn painted Konoha in watercolor hues of amber and rose, the village eerily tranquil after yesterday's interdimensional chaos. Reconstruction had begun before first light, civilian carpenters working alongside shinobi wielding earth jutsu to repair shattered buildings. Despite the physical damage, an intangible tension lingered in the air like static before a lightning strike. Naruto sat cross-legged atop the Hokage monument, the crystal Marcarita had given him rotating slowly above his upturned palm without being touched. Each revolution sent pulses of coolness through his chakra network, temporarily soothing the unfamiliar energies that had taken residence there. 3 hours he'd remained motionless, searching for stillness while his mind raced with unanswerable questions. Your breathing pattern indicates unsuccessful meditation, observed a familiar melodic voice. Naruto didn't open his eyes. I thought you weren't coming back for 3 days. I said you had 3 days to prepare, Marcarita corrected, floating cross-legged opposite him without disturbing a single blade of grass. I never specified my own schedule. The crystal spun faster in response to her presence, emitting a faint chime that resonated with something deep within Naruto's transformed chakra pathways. He finally opened his eyes to find her studying him with clinical detachment, her staff balanced perfectly across her knees. You have questions, she stated rather than asked. A few thousand, Naruto admitted, watching the sunrise illuminate her blue skin with golden highlights. Let's start with, what exactly is happening to me? Marcarita considered him for a moment, head tilted slightly. Quote, do you understand the concept of resonant frequencies? When things vibrate at matching rates and amplify each other. Like pushing someone on a swing with perfect timing. A simplification, but adequate. She pointed to the floating crystal. All energy in the multiverse vibrates at specific frequencies. Mortal energy, what you call chakra, ordinarily cannot synchronize with divine energies due to fundamental dimensional constraints. Quote, but mine is, yes, an exceedingly rare anomaly. She raised her staff, creating a miniature projection of 12 spheres arranged in a circle. The multiverse contains 12 primary universes, each overseen by a god of destruction paired with an angel attendant, myself included. Above us stand the Grand Priest and Zeno, the Omni King. The projection S, hefted to show a hierarchical structure with a small, childlike figure at the top. That little guy is the most powerful being in existence. Naruto asked skeptically. Appearances are often deceiving in cosmic matters. Marcarita replied with a hint of amusement. Zeno could erase all 12 universes with a single thought if he wished. The enormity of this statement struck Naruto silent. His experiences during the Fourth Shinobi War had exposed him to tremendous power, but nothing approaching the scale she described. Your world exists within Universe 7, she continued, overseen by Lord Beerus and his attendant Whis. A relatively unremarkable planet in a relatively unremarkable galaxy, rarely warranting cosmic attention until now. Until me. Indeed. The projection vanished as Marcarita leaned forward slightly. Celestial resonance changes everything. Throughout cosmic history, perhaps a dozen mortals have manifested this capability. Most self-destructed within hours as divine energy overwhelmed their physical forms. Naruto swallowed hard, and the ones who didn't. They ascended, becoming something beyond their original nature. The specific outcomes varied based on individual potential and cosmic circumstance. She gestured to the crystal. Your resonance has already progressed further than most. The integration with your Biju energy creates interesting possibilities. Before Naruto could ask what interesting possibilities meant, he sensed a familiar chakra signature approaching. Hinata landed lightly beside them, dressed in modified combat gear with her hair tied back in a practical braid. Her Byakugan was active, the veins around her eyes more pronounced than usual, with a subtle lavender glow emanating from her pupils. Your eyes, Naruto began, rising to his feet. They've been like this since yesterday, she confirmed, her voice calm despite the obvious concern underlying her words. I can see everything. Too much, sometimes. Marcarita stood in one fluid motion, circling Hinata with analytical interest. Sympathetic resonance, she murmured. Your visual prowess acts as a conduit for dimensional perception, and proximity to H's celestial awakening has triggered adaptive evolution. Can you help her? Naruto asked, the crystal now orbiting faster as his emotions intensified. Perhaps, Marcarita replied, though her condition differs from yours. She isn't channeling celestial energy directly, merely perceiving it. She raised her staff toward Hinata's forehead. May I? Hinata nodded once, standing perfectly still. The orb atop Marcarita's staff glowed softly. A thin beam of light connected it to the center of Hinata's forehead, and the lavender glow in her eyes stabilized, becoming less frantic. There, Marcarita said, lowering her staff. I've established frequency boundaries. Your perception will remain enhanced but controlled, preventing sensory overload. Thank you, Hinata exhaled, blinking as E-world settled into more manageable dimensions around her. She turned to Naruto, her expression resolute. The Hokage has called an emergency council meeting. They're waiting for us. The ill chamber hummed with hushed conversations that died immediately when Naruto entered with Hinata and Marcarita. Around the circular table sat the Konoha Council, clan heads, and several unexpected faces. Gaara represented Suna, while delegates from other hidden villages occupied seats normally reserved for Konoha elders. An international incident, then, Naruto murmured. Kakashi, still bearing scuff marks from yesterday's battle, stood as they approached. Thank you for joining us. Given the unprecedented nature of yesterday's events, I've invited representatives from our allied nations. A wise precaution, Marcarita observed, floating rather than walking to the empty seat offered. Her casual defiance of gravity caused several council members to shift uncomfortably. Perhaps introductions are in order, Kakashi suggested with practiced diplomacy. Marcarita inclined her head. I am Marcarita, angel attendant to Lord Belmont, god of destruction of Universe 11. I serve as his guide, advisor, and teacher. And these, gods of destruction? Homura asked, the elderly counselor's voice sharp with suspicion. Exactly as their title suggests. They maintain cosmic balance by destroying planets, civilizations, or entities that threaten universal stability. Her tone remained conversational despite the horrified expressions her explanation produced. A necessary function in cosmic ecology. And why have we never heard of these beings before? Demanded Kaharu. Your world exists on a relatively isolated dimensional frequency. Until recently, it had no reason to interact with the broader cosmic community. Marcarita turned to Naruto. His resonance changed that, creating ripples across dimensional barriers. So this is Naruto's fault? Homura asked acerbically. No, Gaara interrupted, his usually impassive face showing rare irritation. Based on reports from our sensory core, these disturbances began months before yesterday's attack. Something was already weakening the barriers between dimensions. Shikamaru nodded in agreement. The mercenaries we encountered had established that array well in advance. They were waiting for someone with Naruto's particular energy signature. Correct, Marcarita confirmed. The Null Council has spent centuries searching for resonant mortals across multiple universes. They've developed methods to detect such individuals even in their dormant state. And what exactly is this, Null Council? Kakashi asked. An organization of beings from various universes who oppose the current cosmic hierarchy. Marcarita's expression showed mild distaste. They believe the system of gods and angels represents tyrannical oversight of mortal realms. Some of their criticisms contain valid philosophical points, but their methods threaten cosmic stability itself. Their immediate goal, dimensional merger. By using a resonant mortal as catalyst, they hope to collapse the barriers between selected universes, creating an A.W. cosmic order beyond the authority of the gods of destruction. She gestured to Naruto. Such a process would almost certainly destroy the catalyst and annihilate countless civilizations in the process. Silence fell over the chamber as they processed these implications. What happens now? Tsunade finally asked, her hands clasped tightly before her. Naruto requires proper training to stabilize and control his celestial resonance. Marcarita explained. Otherwise, the energy will eventually overwhelm his system, with catastrophic consequences for himself and potentially this entire world. And you're offering this training out of the goodness of your heart. Tsunade's skepticism was palpable. I am fulfilling my cosmic responsibilities, Marcarita corrected. Celestial law mandates intervention when resonance manifests in a mortal realm. The alternatives would be unpleasant for everyone involved. What alternatives? Naruto asked quietly. Marcarita met his gaze directly. Containment or elimination. If you cannot be trained, cosmic law would require that you be sealed in a dimensional prison for eternity or... She left the second option unspoken. I see. Naruto's voice remained steady, though the crystal orbiting his hand briefly flared brighter. Then I accept your training offer. Naruto, Kakashi began, we should discuss. With respect, Kakashi-sensei, there's nothing to discuss. Naruto stood, addressing the entire council. I've never run from responsibility, and I'm not starting now. If this power could threaten our world, I need to master it. The training cannot occur here. Marcarita interjected. The dimensional instabilities would pose too great a risk to your population. We must utilize a nexus point, a location where cosmic energies utterly converge and can be safely channeled. Where is this nexus point? Hinata asked. Approximately 300 kilometers northeast of this village, beneath what you call the Shizuoka mountain range. Marcarita traced a pattern in the air, creating a glowing map. A dormant volcanic chamber that intersects with 7-dimensional planes. Hiashi Hyuga leaned forward, studying the map with narrowed eyes. That region falls under the protection of the Hyuga clan's ancient charter. Our records speak of a sacred site there, forbidden to all but those with the blessed sight. Your ancestors likely sensed the dimensional convergence and established protections around it, Marcarita agreed. Many of your clan's techniques derive from proximity to cosmic wavelengths, diluted through generations. This revelation caused a stir among the council members, but Hiashi merely nodded thoughtfully. I will accompany Naruto to this location, he declared, surprising everyone including his daughter. Father, our clan scrolls contain references to celestial guardianship dating back before the founding of the hidden villages, Hiashi explained. If what she says is true, the Hyuga have a responsibility in this matter. I will also join this expedition, Gaara stated calmly. As Kazekage and Naruto's friend, I have both official and personal interests in these developments. Kakashi surveyed the room before nodding. Very well. Naruto will begin training under Marcarita's guidance at this nexus point, accompanied by a small delegation including Hinata and Hiashi Hyuga, Gaara, and... He paused, considering. Shikamaru Nara for strategic assessment. I would also recommend a sensory type with elemental versatility, Marcarita suggested. The initial stages involve significant environmental disruption. I'll go, Tsunade volunteered unexpectedly. My medical expertise might prove useful if there are physical side effects, and my elemental control is sufficient. The arrangements continued for another hour, discussing logistics, communications protocols, and contingency plans. Throughout, Naruto remained uncharacteristically quiet, the crystal now spinning so rapidly above his palm that it appeared as a solid blue ring. The journey to the nexus point took 2 days, the terrain growing increasingly rugged as they approached the Shizuoka range. NT forests gave way to bare rock faces and narrow passes where the air felt strangely charged, raising the hair on their arms. Marcarita floated alongside them effortlessly, apparently immune to physical exertion. She spent much of the journey explaining cosmic principles to Naruto, whose resonance flared unpredictably whenever they crossed what she called dimensional fault lines. The multiverse resembles a vast ocean, she explained as they traversed a narrow ridge overlooking a mist-filled valley. Each universe is a current flowing at its own pace and direction. Occasionally, these currents converge or diverge, creating turbulence that manifests as dimensional anomalies. Like the breaches above Konoha, Naruto surmised, leaping across a gap in the ridge. Precisely. Though those were artificially induced. Natural convergence points are more stable, functioning as bridges rather than ruptures. Hinata, leading the group with her enhanced Byakugan, stopped abruptly at a seemingly unremarkable rock face. "There's something here," she announced, her lavender-tinged eyes narrowing in concentration. "A passage through the mountain, but it exists in multiple places simultaneously." Hiyashi activated his own Byakugan, frowning deeply. "I see only solid rock." "Your perception is evolving rapidly," Marcarita told Hinata with approval. "You're seeing quantum superpositio. The entrance exists in several potential states until observed in a particular way." She approached the rock face and traced a complex pattern with her staff. The stone rippled like water, revealing a narrow tunnel that seemed to bend in impossible directions. "Incredible," Tsunade murmured, examining the phenomenon with scientific curiosity. "The rock composition hasn't changed, but the molecular bonds have altered their dimensional orientation." "A crude description, but essentially correct," Marcarita agreed. "This passage connects directly to the Nexus chamber." They proceeded single file through the tunnel, which defied conventional geometry, turning at angles that should have intersected with their previous path yet somehow continued deeper into the mountain. Periodically, the walls displayed glowing symbols that Hiyashi identified as ancient precursors to modern Fuinjutsu scripts. "Our clan records contain similar markings," he noted, studying them with scholarly interest. "Always associated with legends of sky visitors and divine eyes. Many of your world's myths reference early celestial contact," Marcarita confirmed. "Though most accounts become distorted through generations of retelling." After what felt like hours of traversing the impossible tunnel, they emerged into a vast spherical chamber at least 100 meters in diameter. Unlike the rough tunnel, this space featured perfectly smooth walls inscribed with intricate geometric patterns that seemed to shift when viewed peripherally. The chamber's center held a platform of crystalline material that glowed with soft blue light. Suspended above a pool of what appeared to be liquid mercury, 7 enormous pillars arranged in a circle supported a dome ceiling that somehow displayed a view of stars despite being deep underground. "The Nexus Point," Marcarita announced unnecessarily. Naruto felt it immediately, a profound resonance that made the new energy within him surge in recognition. The crystal he carried shot from his hand to the center of the platform, expanding to form a complex three-dimensional lattice that pulsed in time with his heartbeat. "This chamber exists at the intersection of 7-dimensional planes," Marcarita explained, gesturing to the pillars. "Each represents a different cosmic frequency that we must harmonize with your resonant energy." "It's beautiful," Hinata whispered, her enhanced vision perceiving layers of reality invisible to the others. Streams of multicolored light flowed through the chamber like auroras, converging at the central platform. "What happens now?" Gaara asked, his sand swirling uneasily around him. Something about the chamber seemed to agitate his control. "Now we begin the first lesson in celestial harmonization," Marcarita replied. Floating to the central platform. "Naruto, join me here. The rest of you should maintain distance behind the outer ring markers." The initial attunement can produce unpredictable effects. As the others retreated to the designated observation area, Naruto stepped onto the crystalline platform. The material felt neither solid nor liquid beneath his feet, more like standing on tightly compressed air that yielded slightly with each step. "Remove your protective headband and outer garments," Marcarita instructed. "Metal and dense fibers can interfere with energy flow." Naruto complied, stripping down to the lightweight mesh underarmor standard to Jonin uniforms. The chamber's ambient temperature was perfectly comfortable despite the mountain's natural chill. "Now, sit in meditate. Ion posture and focus on the crystal formation." As Naruto settled cross-legged before the expanded crystal lattice, Marcarita raised her staff and tapped it once against the platform. The entire chamber resonated like a struck bell, the sound reverberating at frequencies that made his bones vibrate. "Celestial energy operates on fundamentally different principles than chakra," she began, her voice taking on a formal teaching cadence. "Chakra is produced within the body and projected outward. Celestial energy exists everywhere simultaneously. You don't create it, you channel it." The crystal lattice began rotating slowly, its complexity increasing with each revolution as new branches formed and interconnected. "Visualize your chakra network as you understand it," Marcarita continued. The familiar pathways through which your energy flows." Naruto closed his eyes, mentally tracing the network he'd become intimately familiar with through years of training. He could feel Kurama's energy flowing alongside his own. The two perfectly harmonized after years of partnership. Now, expand your awareness beyond those pathways. There exists a secondary network that has begun forming s. Your resonance activated. Subtle connections to the space between spaces. Concentrating deeply, Naruto sensed what she described, gossamer thin filaments extending from his chakra network into somewhere else. These new pathways felt incomplete, fragile, like a spider's web still under construction. These connections allow you to draw upon celestial energy, Marcarita explained. Today, W.E. will strengthen and stabilize them through controlled exposure. She tapped her staff against the platform twice more. The crystal lattice's rotation accelerated, and thin streams of blue-white energy began flowing from it toward Naruto. As the first stream made contact with his body, pain unlike anything he'd experienced seared through him, not physical agony but something more fundamental, as though reality itself rejected his existence. Don't fight it, Marcarita instructed calmly. Your instinct is to resist the foreign energy. Instead, allow it to pass through you without resistance. Easier said than done, Naruto thought grimly, but he forced himself to relax, to accept rather than oppose the invasive energy. Gradually, the pain transformed into intense pressure, then into a tingling sensation as his newly forming pathways expanded to accommodate the flow. Good, Marcarita approved. Now, direct the energy to circulate through your entire system, following the pattern of the crystal lattice. With concentrated effort, Naruto guided the celestial energy along the paths visualized in the rotating lattice. Where chakra felt warm and dynamic, this energy was cool and strangely static, less like a flowing river and more like an electric current. Time lost meaning as he worked with the unfamiliar power, learning its properties through direct experience. Occasionally, Marcarita would adjust the flow or provide guidance, but mostly she observed with analytical detachment. How long the initial session continued, Naruto couldn't say. Eventually, Marcarita tapped her staff 3 times in rapid succession, and the energy flow ceased. The crystal lattice settled into a stable configuration, no longer expanding but maintaining its complex structure. Enough for today, she announced. Your adaptation proceeds more rapidly than anticipated. Naruto opened his eyes, blinking in disorientation. The chamber appeared dramatically different, the geometric patterns on the walls now glowed with vibrant color, and he could perceive faint outlines of structures that existed in overlapping dimensions. More startlingly, when he looked toward his friends, he could see their energy systems with perfect clarity. Hinata's chakra network shimmered with lavender light that extended beyond her physical form. Gaara's contained swirling patterns of gold and blue where his Biju had once resided. Tsunade's precise medical chakra formed intricate lattices throughout her body. Shikamaru's shadow-natured energy pulsed with intelligent patterns, and Hiyashi's Byakugan enhanced system displayed evolutionary adaptations unique to his bloodline. Your perception has already begun to transcend physical limitations, Marcarita noted, following his gaze. This is merely the first step. Naruto stood, surprised to find his body felt lighter and more responsive than before. The new pathways had stabilized, no longer feeling foreign but integrated with his existing network. How do you feel? Tsunade called from the observation area, her medical training evident in her assessing gaze. Different, Naruto answered honestly. Like I've been wearing weights my whole life and suddenly removed them. He stepped off the platform, crossing to his companions. Hinata moved forward to meet him, her enhanced eyes studying him intently. Your aura has changed, she observed softly. It's expanded. Before Naruto could respond, a thunderous crash echoed through the chamber as a section of wall exploded inward. Through the breach stepped a woman with long blonde hair bound in a battle braid. Wearing the distinctive red and blue uniform of Kumogakur. Most striking were her eyes, slitted like a cat's and glowing with unnatural green fire. Found you, she growled, her voice layered with a second deeper timbre. What have you done to us, Uzumaki? Yugito ni. Naruto identified the two-tails Jinchuriki with surprise. According to all reports, she had been killed by Akatsuki years ago. The Null Council's interference has created unpredicted temporal anomalies, Marcarita observed with mild interest. Fascinating. Gaara's sand formed a defensive barrier between the group and the newcomer. Explain yourself, he demanded. Yugito's eyes narrowed, the green fire intensifying. Every Biju across the continent started screaming 3 days ago, psychic agony that nearly drove us mad. Then I started having visions of impossible things. Worlds beyond worlds. Beings of unimaginable power. Her gaze fixed on Naruto. All centered around you. How are you alive? Tsunade asked directly. Our intelligence confirmed your death. A bitter smile twisted Yugito's lips. Apparently death didn't take. I woke up in a cave 2 years ago with no memory of how I escaped Akatsuki. Been living off the grid ever since. She gestured to her head. Matabi and I figured it was better to stay dead while we sorted things out. The temporal disruption likely created a causal loop. Marcarita hypothesized. Her consciousness from a potential timeline where she escaped has been transferred to this primary timeline, overriding her original fate. That means nothing to me. Yugito snapped, then winced as if in pain. Matabi won't stop howling about the Ancient One awakening, and Skyfire returning to the flesh realm. What did you do, Uzumaki? Before Naruto could answer, Hinata stepped forward, her Byakugan active. Your Biju's chakra is resonating with the same frequency as Naruto's new energy, she observed. It's causing a harmonic oscillation in your network. Yugito stared at Hinata with obvious surprise. Your eyes, they're like mine now. Seeing too much. I can help stabilize the connection, Hinata offered, approaching cautiously. The resonance is painful because it's uncontrolled. After a moment's hesitation, Yugito nodded. Hinata placed her palm gently against the other woman's forehead, channeling a small amount of her own chakra to form a dampening barrier similar to what Marcarita had created for her. The effect was immediate. Yugito's tense posture relaxed, and the fiery glow in her eyes dimmed to a manageable level. Better, she acknowledged grudgingly, but I still want answers. Join the club, Shikamaru muttered. Over the next hour, they explained the situation to Yugito, whose expressio NS ranged from disbelief to grim understanding. Throughout the explanation, Marcarita observed with detached interest, occasionally correcting technical details about cosmic mechanics. So basically, Naruto's turning into some kind of what, angel? Yugito finally asked. That would be an oversimplification, Marcarita replied. Angel status requires more than mere energy compatibility. It involves fundamental transformation of consciousness and dimensional integration that takes millennia to complete. But he's on that path, Yugito pressed. Potentially. The resonance creates possibility, not certainty. Marcarita's expression revealed nothing of her personal thoughts on the matter. What makes this case particularly interesting is the Biju involvement. The tailed beasts are fragmentary echoes of a much older cosmic entity, one that predates even the current generation of gods of destruction. This revelation startled everyone, including Naruto. Kurama never mentioned anything like that, he said. The knowledge was likely sealed when the original entity was divided, Marcarita explained. Your Biju's memories would contain only fragments, perhaps manifesting as instinctual reactions rather than coherent recollection. Yugito frowned thoughtfully. Matabi has always had gaps. Moments of knowing things she couldn't possibly know, then forgetting them immediately after. Precisely. Marcarita turned to Naruto. Your resonance is awakening those dormant memories across all Biju simultaneously. That's why she was drawn here. The two tails recognized the energy signature and compelled its host to seek the source. Will other Jinchuriki experience the same? Gaara asked with concern. Almost certainly, though the response may vary based on individual circumstances and the specific Biju involved. Hiashi, who had remained silent throughout much of the exchange, suddenly straightened. Something's coming, he announced, his Byakugan focused on the chamber's ceiling. A disturbance in the dimensional fabric directly above us. Everyone tensed, preparing for another potential threat, but Marcarita merely sighed with apparent annoyance. Right on schedule, she muttered. I was wondering when they'd notice. The starry ceiling rippled like disturbed water, and a slender figure descended through the distortion. Female in appearance with lavender skin and white hair tied in a high ponytail, she carried a staff nearly identical to Marcarita's. Her expression combined curiosity with faint amusement. Marcarita, the newcomer greeted with exaggerated warmth. How delightful to find you playing teacher in this quaint little dimension. Vados, Marcarita acknowledged coolly. Universe 6 is quite distant from here. One might wonder, what brings you to Universe 7's jurisdiction? Oh, merely professional curiosity. Vados landed gracefully beside the central platform, her eyes immediately finding Naruto. So this is the resonant mortal causing such a stir across the multiverse. How fascinating. The situation is being handled according to celestial protocol, Marcarita stated firmly. There's no need for additional involvement. Protocol, yes. Vados circled Naruto slowly, studying him with intense interest. Though I wonder if Lord Beerus and Whis are aware that you're conducting training in their universe without formal notification. Naruto glanced between the two angels, sensing an undercurrent of tension beneath their outwardly civil exchange. This matter falls under the emergency intervention clause of the Celestial Compact. Marcarita responded. Full documentation has been submitted to the Grand Priest. Of course. Vados smiled pleasantly, though the expression didn't reach her eyes. I merely thought to offer my assistance. After all, my training methods have produced rather impressive results with Universe 6 prodigies. Your assistance is unnecessary. Marcarita's tone remained polite but had cooled several degrees. Vados turned her attention to the others, gaze lingering on Hinata and Yugito. How interesting that this resonance has already affected others in proximity. Sympathetic. I see evolution in mortals as exceedingly rare. What do you really want? Naruto asked directly, tired of the verbal sparring. Vados appeared delighted by his directness. Straightforward, isn't he? I appreciate that. She tapped her staff lightly against the floor. What I want, Naruto Uzumaki, is to ensure this remarkable development reaches its full potential rather than being constrained by conventional approaches. Meaning, Naruto pressed. Meaning that Marcarita's training methods, while technically correct, tend toward the conservative. Vados glanced at her fellow angel with a smile that bordered on condescending. Universe 11 has always prioritized stability over innovation. With good reason, Marcarita replied. Reckless acceleration of resonance development has resulted in catastrophic outcomes in the past. Quote, ancient history, Vados dismissed with a wave. Modern understanding of celestial mechanics allows for more efficient approaches. The tension between the two angels was becoming palpable, the air in the chamber growing heavy with what felt like gathering storm energy. Perhaps, Hiashi interrupted diplomatically, both perspectives could prove value. Able in different aspects of the training. Marcarita and Vados both turned to him with identical expressions of surprise, clearly unaccustomed to mortal intervention in their disagreements. Sen's Ibel suggestion from an unexpected source, Vados acknowledged after a moment. I have no objection to collaborative instruction, if Marcarita doesn't feel her methods would suffer by comparison. Subtle challenge hung in the air between them. The mortal's well-being takes priority over professional rivalry, Marcarita finally stated. Complementary approaches may indeed provide more comprehensive development. Wonderful. Vados clapped her hands together once, the sound reverberating through the chamber with unusual resonance. Then it's settled. I shall join this charming expedition as a secondary instructor. Naruto exchanged glances with his companions, sensing that this development complicated matters significantly. Hinata's expression showed concern, while Yugito looked vague, amused by the cosmic politics playing out before them. Gaara remained impassive as ever, though his sand swirled more actively around his feet. If you're staying, Tsunade addressed Vados directly. Then you'll need to explain your training methodology so we can monitor for potential medical complications. How delightfully protective, Vados observed with a smile. Rest assured, Lady Tsunade. My methods may be more dynamic than Marcarita's, but they're perfectly safe for a compatible subject. She turned to Naruto. The key difference in our approaches is simple. Marcarita believes in gradual adaptation to celestial energy, while I advocate for immersive integration. Immersive integration carries significantly higher risk, Marcarita countered. With correspondingly higher rewards, Vados completed. The question becomes, what kind of student are you, Naruto Uzumaki? Cautious or bold? Before Naruto could answer, the entire chamber shuddered violently. Dust and small fragments of stone rained from the ceiling as the geometric patterns on the walls flared with crimson light. What's happening? Shikamaru demanded, already calculating escape routes. Marcarita and Vados exchanged alarmed glances. Their rivalry momentarily forgotten. Dimensional tremor, Marcarita explained, moving swiftly to the central platform. Far too powerful to be natural. The resonance pattern suggests deliberate disruption. Vados agreed, joining her. Both angels raised their staffs, channeling energy into the crystal lattice which had begun to destabilize. Hinata, her Byakugan at maximum range, gasped in shock. Something's happening to the nature energy across the entire region. It's inverting somehow. Naruto felt it too, a profound wrongness spreading through the natural world. Where nature energy normally flowed in harmonious patterns, it now twisted and contorted like a living thing in agony. Yugito clutched her head suddenly. Matabi says it's him. The Devourer awakens. Who? Gaara demanded. Moro. Marcarita and Vados replied in unison, their voices unnaturally grave. An ancient entity who once challenged the gods of destruction themselves, Marcarita elaborated. Her staff glowing brighter as she worked to stabilize the dimensional fluctuations. He was sealed away eons ago in a prison dimension. The Null Council must have located his prison, Vados continued. They're using the disruption caused by Naruto's resonance as cover to weaken the seals. Another, stronger tremor shook the chamber. Several of the geometric patterns on the walls cracked, leaking wisps of crimson energy. Can we stop it? Naruto asked, already moving to the platform to assist. Not from here, Marcarita answered grimly. The process has progressed too far. We can only stabilize this nexus point to prevent it from becoming a breach point. What happens if Moro escapes? Tsunade asked. Devastation beyond your comprehension, Vados replied with uncharacteristic solemnity. He consumes life energy, what you call nature energy, from entire planets. His power grows with each absorption. Then we fight, Naruto stated simply. Both angels turned to him, with identical expressions of astonishment. You cannot possibly comprehend the scale of power involved, Marcarita began. Doesn't matter, Naruto cut her off. If this thing threatens my world, I'll find a way to stop it. That's what I do. For the first time, something like respect flickered in Marcarita's eyes. Your determination is admirable, if misguided. In your current state, you would last seconds against even Moro's weakened form. Then train me faster, Naruto challenged, looking between both angels. You said I'm adapting quickly, push it further. If conservative won't work, then I choose bold. Vados smiled slowly, genuine delight spreading across her features. Oh, I do believe I'm going to enjoy working with you, Naruto Uzumaki. This is reckless, Marcarita objected, though with less conviction than before. So was creating the resonance array that started this whole situation, Naruto countered. Sometimes the only way forward is through. Another tremor, stronger than the previous ones, rocked the chamber. Cracks appeared in several of the supporting pillars. We must stabilize the nexus before continuing this discussion, Vados insisted. Naruto, ace your hands on the crystal lattice and channel your resonant energy through it. Focus on creating counter vibrations to the tremors. Without hesitation, Naruto placed his palms against the lattice. The moment he made contact, his consciousness expanded exponentially, suddenly aware of energy patterns extending far beyond the chamber. He could sense the dimensional fault lines spreading outward from a distant location. Feel the unnatural corruption of nature energy as something vast and hungry began stirring from ancient slumber. Guided by instinct rather than knowledge, he pushed his energy through the lattice, creating stabilizing patterns that opposed the chaotic fluctuations. The crystal structure responded immediately, its glow intensifying as it amplified his efforts. Marcarita and Vados added their own energies to the process, the three of them forming a surprisingly effective triad. Where Naruto provided raw power and intuitive patterning, Marcarita contributed precision and structure, while Vados added adaptive complexity that allowed their work to evolve in response to changing conditions. Slowly, the tremors subsided. The crimson light faded from the wall patterns, returning to their normal blue-white glow. The cracks in the pillars sealed themselves as the dimensional fabric stabilized. Impressive adaptability, Vados commented as they withdrew from the lattice. You instinctively formed counter harmonics without formal training. Indeed, Marcarita agreed reluctantly. Your natural affinity for celestial energy exceeds theoretical projections. Naruto stepped back from the platform, feeling simultaneously exhausted and energized. The new pathways in his system hummed with residual power, more fully integrated than before. What just happened? Shikamaru demanded, ever the strategist seeking complete information. The first tremors of a cosmic earthquake, Vados explained. Moro remains imprisoned for now, but the seals have weakened significantly. The Null Council nearly succeeded in their first attempt to free him. They'll try again, Marcarita added. And with each attempt, the barriers will weaken further. How long do we have? Gaara asked. The angels exchanged calculating glances. Difficult to predict precisely, Marcarita admitted. Dimensional mechanics involve too many variables for exact forecasting. But based on the decay rate of the ceiling harmonics, Vados continued, I would estimate between 3 and 6 months before complete failure. 3 months to prepare for a threat that once challenged the gods of destruction. Hiashi summarized grimly. The odds seem unfavorable. They've always been unfavorable, Naruto replied with a faint smile. Hasn't stopped us before. Yugito studied him with new interest. Is he always this stubbornly optimistic? Always, Hinata confirmed, though her expression held pride rather than criticism. Well, if we're accelerating the training timeline, we should begin immediately. Vados declared with unexpected enthusiasm. The dimensional stability has been restored sufficiently for basic exercises. We should establish a proper protocol first, Marcarita countered. Unstructured acceleration could be exactly what's needed under these circumstances, Vados interrupted smoothly. Traditional celestial pedagogy assumes decades or centuries for integration. We have months. Their disagreement might have continued, but Naruto stepped between them. I have an idea, he said. Why not alternate approaches? Marcarita's foundational stability training in the mornings. Vados's acceleration techniques in the afternoons. That way I get both perspectives. The angels considered this proposal with mild surprise. A reasonable compromise, Marcarita conceded after a moment. Quite practical, Vados agreed with a speculative glance at Naruto. Perhaps there's wisdom in this mortal after all. Tsunade stepped forward. I'll need to monitor his physical condition throughout. If either training method shows signs of causing damage, we adjust immediately. Of course, Vados acquiesced graciously. Mortal bodies have limitations that must be respected, even as we work to transcend them. With the immediate crisis resolved and a training plan established, the group began organizing the chamber into a more functional space. Gaara used his sand manipulation to create comfortable seating areas and sleeping platforms along the walls. Tsunade established a medical monitoring station, while Shikamaru set up a communication system. Using specialized scrolls to maintain contact with Konoha, Hinata approached Naruto as he stood gazing at the crystal lattice, which had settled into a new, more complex configuration after their work to stabilize the nexus. Your aura has changed again, she observed quietly. It's becoming more defined. Naruto turned to her with a smile that didn't quite hide his concern. Is that good or bad? Neither. Just different. She hesitated, then added, I can see the new pathways forming throughout your system. They're beautiful, like branches of lightning frozen in crystal. Can you see what I'm becoming? He asked, the question more vulnerable than he'd intended. Hinata studied him thoughtfully, her enhanced Byakugan perceiving layers beyond physical form. I see you, Naruto. More fully realized, perhaps. But still fundamentally you. She took his hand, her touch grounding him in ways the celestial energy couldn't. Your heart hasn't changed, even if your energy has. From across the chamber, Yugito watched their interaction with an unreadable expression. Catching Naruto's glance, she offered a challenging half-smile before turning away to speak with Gaara about security arrangements. Meanwhile, Vados and Marcarita had moved to opposite sides of the chamber, each preparing materials for their respective training approaches. Their superficial cooperation barely masked the underlying competition that would inevitably characterize their joint instruction. As night fell in the world above, the stars displayed on the chamber's ceiling shifted in patterns that reflect constellations no human had ever mapped, cosmic configurations meaningful only to beings who measured time in millennia rather than moments. Naruto felt the weight of unprecedented responsibility settling on his shoulders. In seeking to protect his world from one threat, he had inadvertently accelerated a far greater danger. Now, a being powerful enough to challenge gods was stirring from ancient imprisonment, and somehow, he was expected to make a difference in the coming conflict. Yet alongside the trepidation, he felt something else, a quiet certainty that had guided him through every previous challenge. He would find a way. He always did. The crystal lattice pulsed once, as if in agreement, sending ripples of celestial light dancing across the chamber walls. Above the mountain, unseen by mortal eyes, nature energy continued to behave erratically, flowing in patterns that hadn't been observed since the dawn of the shinobi world. Ancient entities throughout the cosmos turned their attention toward a seemingly insignificant planet in Universe 7, where a mortal had begun a journey unprecedented in cosmic history. The threshold had been crossed. There would be no turning back. Chapter 2 and Chapter 3, Celestial Techniques. Again, Marcarita instructed, her voice betraying neither impatience nor encouragement as Naruto struggled to maintain the delicate energy sphere hovering between his palms. Sweat beaded across his forehead, trickling down his temples despite the chamber's perfect temperature. 5 hours into their morning session, fatigue pulled at him like gravity. His muscles trembling with exertion. Unlike chakra manipulation, which had eventually become as natural as breathing, celestial energy remained stubbornly foreign, requiring constant, meticulous concentration. The sphere's harmonic frequency is destabilizing, Marcarita observed clinically. Recalibrate the dimensional resonance to match the chamber's baseline. I'm trying, Naruto muttered through gritted teeth. The iridescent sphere wobbled, its perfect symmetry distorting as thin filaments of golden chakra accidentally leaked into the bluish celestial energy. It doesn't want to stay separate from my natural chakra. Desire and resistance are irrelevant. Celestial energy responds only to precise intent and perfect form. Marcarita circled him, tapping her staff rhythmically against the crystalline floor. Each tap emitted a tone that somehow made the air feel thicker, heavier. Your mortal energy is contaminating the celestial wavelength because you're attempting to control rather than conduct. The sphere collapsed suddenly, imploding with a sound like shattered glass. A shockwave of displaced energy rippled outward, disturbing the geometric patterns etched into the chamber walls. Naruto exhaled sharply in frustration. 7 failures in a row. 8. Marcarita corrected dispassionately. Your first attempt maintained structural integrity for less than 1 second. From her observation position near one of the massive pillars, Hinata watched with concerned eyes. Over the past week, she'd witnessed Naruto's growing frustration with Marcarita's methodical approach, an approach that seemed fundamentally misaligned with his intuitive learning style. Perhaps we should break for nutrition and recovery, Hiashi suggested diplomatically. The Hyuga clan head had taken to documenting each training session in a scroll using notation techniques dating back to his clan's earliest records. Physical fatigue is merely a limitation of perception, Marcarita replied. Celestial beings transcend such constraints. He isn't celestial yet, Tsunade pointed out sharply. His readings show significant chakra depletion and early signs of neural strain. Marcarita's expression remained neutral, though something like disappointment flickered briefly in her eyes. Very well. We will resume after a suitable recovery interval. As the angel drifted toward the chamber's far side, Naruto dropped unceremoniously to a sitting position, head hanging in exhaustion. Hinata immediately moved to his side, offering a specially formulated food pill and water flask. Thanks, he murmured, accepting both gratefully. I don't understand why this is so difficult. It's like trying to grab smoke with chopsticks. Your progress is still remarkable by any standard, Hinata reminded him gently. Marcarita mentioned yesterday that most resonant mortals take years to achieve what you've managed in days. Doesn't feel like progress when I can't maintain a simple sphere for more than 30 seconds. He swallowed the food pill, grimacing at its bitter taste. Her methods make perfect sense in theory, but in practice, they don't suit how you learn, Hinata finished, understanding immediately. Throughout their lives, she'd observed how Naruto mastered techniques through intuitive leaps rather than methodical study, his shadow clone jutsu, the Rasengan, sage mode, all achieved through unconventional approaches that bypassed traditional pedagogy. Precisely the point I've been making, came a melodious voice from above. Vados descended gracefully from Ri she'd been observing near the dome ceiling, her staff balanced casually across her shoulders. Marcarita's approach is technically flawless but fundamentally incompatible with your cognitive architecture. Unlike her counterpart's formal rigidity, Vados moved with fluid grace, her expression animated by genuine curiosity. Where Marcarita kept emotional distance from her student, Vados seemed fascinated by Naruto's every reaction and response. My afternoon session begins early, it seems, Naruto noted with a tired smile. Merely an observation, not an encroachment, Vados assured him. A conspiratorial wink toward Marcarita, who pretended not to notice. Though I admit some anticipation for our session today, I've designed an approach that should prove more harmonious with your natural learning tendencies. Before Naruto could respond, a low, rumbling growl echoed through his mindscape. He recognized Kurama's distinct tone, but something about it seemed different, older somehow, more primal. Naruto, Hinata questioned, noticing his sudden distraction. It's Kurama, he explained, placing a hand against his abdomen where the seal had once been. He's been restless all morning, but that was almost like a warning. Vados tilted her head, suddenly intrigued. Fascinating. The Biju's dormant memories must be surfacing more rapidly than anticipated. She leaned closer, studying him with heightened interest. What exactly did you perceive from the entity? Not words exactly, more like emotions, uneasiness, recognition. Naruto frowned, trying to articulate the nebulous impression. Almost like when you encounter someone you knew long ago but can't quite place. Yugito approached from where she'd been meditating in a secluded corner, her movements playing the liquid grace characteristic of the Two Tails influence. Matabi's been unusually quiet today, she reported. Almost like she's listening for something. The Biju are remembering, Vados confirmed with obvious fascination. Their fragmented consciousness is beginning to recognize celestial frequencies they haven't encountered since before their division. Remembering what exactly? Shikamaru questioned, ever the strategist seeking intelligence advantages. Vados tapped her staff thoughtfully against her shoulder. That is the intriguing question, isn't it? The entity that became your tailed beasts existed long before the current cosmic order was established. Its memories might contain knowledge lost even to angels. Which makes accessing those memories a priority, Gaara interjected. Though no longer a Jinchuriki, his connection to Shukaku had left him uniquely sensitive to Biju-related matters. If the tailed beasts possess knowledge about threats like Moro, we need to recover it. Agreed, Vados said with surprising enthusiasm. In fact, this dovetails perfectly with my planned approach for today's session. She turned to Naruto with a smile that contained equal parts mischief and determination. How would you feel about a direct mindscape integration with celestial energy? Marcarita, who had been silently observing, suddenly stiffened. That technique is reserved for advanced practitioners with at least a century of foundational training. Under normal circumstances, yes, Vados conceded without conceding. But these circumstances are anything but normal. His Biju connection provides a natural buffer against dimensional dissonance, and his innate resonance suggests compatibility. The risks are present in any approach, Vados completed smoothly. But his progress under conventional methods has been demonstrably limited. Sometimes unconventional challenges require unconventional solutions. Naruto looked between the two angels, fascinated by their ongoing philosophical disagreement about his training. Despite their outward civility, he sensed ancient, deep-rooted differences in their fundamental approaches to celestial instruction. I want to try it, he decided, rising to his feet with renewed energy. If there's even a chance it could help access Kurama's memories or improve my control, it's worth the risk. Marcarita's expression remained neutral, though her disapproval radiated like a tangible force. As you wish, I will observe to intervene if necessary. Splendid. Vados clapped her hands together once, sound resonating with unusual harmonics throughout the chamber. Let's begin immediately. The sooner we break through this plateau, the sooner you can progress to actually interesting techniques. The central platform had been reconfigured for Vados's approach. Where Marcarita's training utilized the crystal lattice as an external focus, Vados had rearranged it into a circular pattern surrounding a meditation space. The crystalline components now pulsed with gentle rhythm, almost like a heartbeat. Your fundamental misconception, Vados explained as Naruto settled into the center of the circle. is approaching celestial energy as something external to be manipulated, like your chakra. But celestial energy is the underlying fabric of reality itself. You don't control it, you participate in it. Her explanation immediately resonated with Naruto's experiences with nature energy and sage mode, which similarly required harmonization rather than domination. Instead of building separate pathways for celestial energy, Vados continued, circling him with animated gestures, we'll create integration points where your chakra naturally intersects with dimensional boundaries. Think of it as building bridges rather than new roads. Tsunade frowned from her monitoring position. That approach would cause his chakra to directly contact celestial energy without buffering protections. The energy differential could destabilize his entire system. In theory, yes, Vados acknowledged cheerfully. In practice, his natural resonance already creates compatibility at these intersection points. We're simply expanding what already exists rather than imposing an artificial structure. The explanation made intuitive sense to Naruto in a way Marcarita's technical instructions never had. Like how I learned to balance nature energy with my chakra in sage mode, he realized aloud. Precisely. Vados beamed with genuine approval. You already understand the principle from your previous training. This is merely applying it at a higher dimensional frequency. She positioned herself opposite him, her staff planted vertically between them. Close your eyes and visualize your interna L energy system, not as pathways but as a living ecosystem. Naruto complied, finding the visualization surprisingly easy. Years of intimate connection with Kurama had given him exceptional awareness of his internal energy landscape. In his mind's eye, he saw his chakra not as the clinical network Marcarita had instructed him to perceive, but as something organic, a forest of golden light with Kurama's massive presence at its center. Like an ancient tree around which everything else had grown. Good, Vados murmured, somehow sensing his visualization without him describing it. Now, I'm going to introduce a small amount of pure celestial energy directly into your mindscape. Don't attempt to control it, simply observe how it interacts with your existing energy. The crystal circle surrounding them began to pulse more rapidly. Naruto felt a cool sensation, like a gentle breeze carrying the scent of stars, though how he recognized that impossible scent, he couldn't say. The foreign energy entered his awareness not as an invasion but as a curious visitor, drifting through the golden forest of his chakra-like mist between trees. Notice the natural points of resonance, Vados instructed softly. Places where the celestial energy slows or gathers. Naruto observed with fascination as the bluish mist indeed behaved exactly as she described, collecting around certain nodes in his chakra system. Particularly where his energy connected with Kurama's. Instead of fighting this natural affinity, he allowed it to happen, curious rather than controlling. Within his mindscape, Kurama stirred, massive tails swaying as the celestial energy brushed against his consciousness. The fox's eyes opened slowly, revealing not their usual crimson but a deep, midnight blue filled with pinpricks of light like distant stars. Old One, Kurama rumbled, his voice somehow different, deeper, more ancient, containing harmonics that seemed to echo from across vast distances. You return after so long. The celestial mist swirled more actively around the Biju, responding to his acknowledgement. Naruto watched in astonishment as Kurama rose from his habitual curled position, stretching to his full height within the mindscape. I remember fragments, ***, the fox continued, addressing the celestial energy directly. Before the division, before the ceiling, when we walked between stars. Kurama, Naruto questioned, uncertain whether his partner was fully himself. The fox turned toward him, recognition returning to his gaze. Kit, this energy, it's awakening memories. Ancient ones, from before the Sage of Six Paths. Before this world was as it is now. Outside in the physical chamber, Vados leaned forward with intense interest. The Biju is accessing dormant memory sequences, she reported to the observers. This is precisely what we hoped for. Within the mindscape, Kurama approached the misty celestial energy, allowing it to swirl around his massive form. We were not always 9, he revealed, his voice containing wonder at his own recovered memories. Before the division, we were a single entity, a guardian assigned to this dimension by beings that walked between universes. The celestial hierarchy, Naruto realized. Older, ***, Kurama corrected. Before the current gods of destruction. Before the angels as they now exist. The first ones, who shaped order from chaos. As he spoke, images flashed through their shared consciousness, fragmentary glimpses of a cosmos in formation, of massive beings of pure energy directing the birth of stars. Of a great conflict that tore reality itself and necessitated guardians to watch over healing dimensional wounds. Our purpose was to maintain dimensional stability in this region of Universe 7, Kurama continued. The memories flowing more freely as the celestial mist intensified around him. We guarded against intrusions from beyond, entities that hungered for newly formed worlds. Entities like Moro, Naruto asked. The name sent a visible shudder through Kurama's form. Moro was once like us, a guardian. But he betrayed his purpose, consuming what he was meant to protect. Growing powerful on stolen energy until even the first ones struggled to contain him. These revelations sent ripples through the celestial mist, which began to organize itself into more coherent patterns around both Kurama and Naruto, no longer random swirls but deliberate, crystalline structures that formed natural bridges between their energies and the celestial frequency. It's working, Vados murmured in the physical world, watching as the crystal circle responded to the internal changes. His system is naturally forming integration patterns. Marcarita, observing with grudging interest, nodded slightly. The Biju's awakening memories are catalyzing the process. Most unexpected. Within the mindscape, Naruto felt something fundamental shifting in his perception. The celestial energy no longer seemed foreign but familiar, as though he was remembering rather than learning, recognizing rather than discovering. This power recognizes you, Kit, Kurama observed with a mixture of pride and concern. Not because you've mastered it, but because it's responding to something inherent in your nature, something that resonates with cosmic frequencies. What does that mean? The fox's expression turned contemplative. I'm not certain. These memories remain fragmentary, but I sense that your emergence was anticipated, somehow. Perhaps even prepared for, long ago. Before Naruto could press for clarification, a tremor shook the mindscape, disrupting the delicate patterns forming between energies. In the physical chamber, the crystal circle flared with sudden intensity as all 7 pillars began to pulse with warning lights. Dimensional disturbance, Marcarita announced sharply. Significant breach forming approximately 3 kilometers east of our position. Vados immediately tapped her staff against the floor, breaking the meditation connection. Naruto's consciousness snapped back to the physical realm, where alarms were already sounding throughout the chamber. The Null Council, Gaara asked, his sand swirling protectively around the group. The energy signature matches their previous incursion, Marcarita confirmed, moving swiftly to the Amber's eastern wall where a monitoring array had materialized. They've located another nexus point and are attempting to establish a direct connection to Moro's prison dimension. Naruto rose to his feet, surprised to find that despite the interrupted session, he felt more energized than depleted. The natural integration approach had somehow stabilized the celestial energy within him rather than exhausting his reserves. We need to stop them, he stated simply. Agreed, Vados said, already creating a dimensional viewing portal in the air before them. Through the swirling aperture, they see a forested mountainside where reality itself appeared to be fracturing, jagged lines of crimson energy spreading across the landscape like cracks in glass. At the center of the disturbance, a group of robed figures surrounded an array similar to the one Naruto and Shikamaru had discovered, but vastly larger and more complex. Energy pulsed from the array upward into a growing tear in the sky, where something massive and dark seemed to be pressing against the thinning dimensional barrier. As that, Shikamaru began. Not Moro himself, Marcarita assured them, though her tone contained little comfort. Merely a projection, a fragment of his consciousness seeking a foothold in this dimension. If it fully manifests, it will establish a more permanent connection that would accelerate his eventual escape. Then we prevent the manifestation, Naruto decided, already moving toward the chamber exit. Hinata, Yugito, Gaara, with me. Shikamaru, coordinate defense here with Tsunade and Hiashi in case this is a diversion. Vados raised an eyebrow, impressed by his immediate tactical assessment. You'll need celestial support to counteract their dimensional manipulation, she pointed out, floating alongside him. I'll accompany your team. As will I, Marcarita added, not to be outdone. Vados can focus on neutralizing their array while I contain the projection. Naruto nodded, accepting their assistance without question. Whatever professional rivalry existed between the angels, their shared concern about this threat overrode it temporarily. As they rushed through the geometrically impossible tunnel connecting the Nexus chamber to the surface, Hinata activated her enhanced Byakugan. 6 primary operators maintaining the array, she reported, her vision extending miles ahead through solid rock. All channeling energy unlike any chakra I've seen before. And something else, behind the dimensional tear, watching. Moro's consciousness fragment, Marcarita confirmed grimly. Already partially aware of this dimension. They emerged onto the mountainside, the cool evening air sharp with ozone from the dimensional disturbance. In the valley below, the tear in R. Elite had grown large enough to dominate the skyline, casting an unnatural crimson glow across the landscape. How do we approach? Gaara asked, already forming his sand into a transportation platform. Directly and with overwhelming force, Vados suggested with unexpected enthusiasm. Their operation requires precise harmonic maintenance. Sufficient disruption will collapse the entire matrix. No, Naruto countered, studying the scene with newfound perceptual clarity. That could trigger a catastrophic dimensional rebound. We need to neutralize the operators first, then dismantle the array systematically. Both angels looked at him with surprise, then approval. Correct assessment, Marcarita acknowledged. Your dimensional perception is developing rapidly. Naruto turned to his companions. Hinata, identify the primary channeling nodes in their array. Yugito, your Biju's fire can disrupt their energy flow without destabilizing the matrix. Gaara, your sand can isolate individ UAL operators without interrupting the entire operation at once. Each nodded, recognizing the wisdom of his strategy. We'll approach from 3 vectors, he continued. Hinata with me from the northwest, Yugito from the east. Gaara from directly above. The angels will stand ready to contain any breakthroughs from the tear itself. Vados twirled her staff with apparent delight. My, you've become quite the tactician. Universe 6 could use strategic minds like yours. Save the recruitment pitch, Naruto replied with a half smile. We have work to do. They split according to plan, moving with shinobi stealth through the forested slopes. As they approached, Naruto felt the dimensional distortion more acutely. Reality itself felt thin, stretched to breaking point around the Null Council's operation. Their array design is similar to the one we encountered before, Hinata observed as they took position behind a rocky outcropping overlooking the site. But more sophisticated. The energy flows in a septuple helix pattern, each layer reinforcing the others. Can you see weak points? Naruto asked, impressed as always by her analytical abilities. Her lavender-tinged Byakugan studied the complex energy patterns. There, she indicated, pointing to a robed figure near the southern edge. That operator is struggling to maintain synchronization. His frequency occasionally misaligns with the others. Naruto nodded, then activated the communication seal Shikamaru had provided. Target identified, he relayed to the others. Southern operator in dark brown robes. Yugito, can you create a distraction to the north while Gaara isolates him? With pleasure, came the feline-tinged reply. Moments later, brilliant blue flames erupted along the northern perimeter of the array, drawing the attention of several operators. Simultaneously, Gaara's sand streamed down with surgical precision, encasing the targeted southern operator before he could react. The sudden removal of his energy contribution created a momentary fluctuation in the array's harmonics. Now, Naruto signaled. He and Hinata launched from their position, moving with coordinated precision toward the array's western edge. 2 operators turned to address this new threat, raising their hands to channel unfamiliar energy toward the intruders. Hinata moved first, her gentle fist modified to interact with the dimensional energies. Where her strikes contacted the operators, energy projections, the foreign power dispersed into harmless sparks. Naruto followed through the opening she created, forming arrays. None that contained a core of celestial energy, a technique he'd been developing during training sessions. When the hybrid Rasengan struck the array's outer ring, the celestial component interacted directly with the dimensional frequencies, creating a controlled disruption rather than catastrophic collapse. A section of the geometric pattern flickered and failed, destabilizing the entire western quadrant. The tear is responding to the disruption, Marcarita called from her position above the battlefield. The projection is attempting to accelerate manifestation before you can disable the array. Indeed, the crimson tear had begun pulsing more rapidly, and within its depths, a massive shadowy form pressed more insistently against the dimensional barrier. Clawed appendages of pure darkness scraped against reality itself, leaving visible scratches in the fabric of space-time. Keep dismantling the array, Vados instructed, raising her staff toward the tear. We'll contain the projection. Both angels moved in perfect synchronization, their staffs tracing complex patterns in the air that created a glowing lattice of celestial energy around the dimensional breach. The projection Ho-W led in frustrated rage, a sound that existed beyond normal auditory range, felt rather than heard as vibrations through bone and tissue. Meanwhile, the battle with the remaining operators intensified. These were no ordinary opponents, each wielded unique abilities drawn from different universal laws. One manipulated gravity in localized fields, another generated temporal distortions that made CKS pass through empty space where he had stood moments before, while a third transformed into living shadow that weapons passed through harmlessly. They're from different universes, Hinata realized, her enhanced vision perceiving subtle dimensional signatures around each opponent. Recruited from across the multiverse. Makes them unpredictable, Naruto acknowledged, dodging a gravity well that compressed a nearby boulder to dust. But also means they're not used to working together. He created a squad of shadow clones, each moving to engage a different operator while he focused on the array itself. The geometric pattern had begun to destabilize from their initial disruption, but the remaining operators were compensating, rerouting energy through intact sections. Yugito had fully embraced her Biju's power. A cloak of blue flame surrounding her as she engaged the temporal manipulator. Matabi says these ones smell wrong, she called to Naruto. Like they've been touched by something that corrupts reality itself. Moro's influence, Marcarita confirmed, still maintaining the containment lattice around the tear. His power leaves a distinctive signature on those who channel it, even indirectly. The bottle's momentum shifted when Gaara unleashed his most precise sand control techniques, creating miniature desert coffins around the hands of 3 operators simultaneously. Without their channeling gestures, their contributions to the array faltered, creating cascading failures throughout the system. The array is collapsing, Hinata reported, watching the energy patterns disintegrate. But something's wrong, the tear isn't closing. It's changing configuration instead. Indeed, as the geometric array failed, the dimensional tear began to contract but also intensify, becoming smaller but more defined. Its edges hardening from nebulous energy into something more permanent. They're sacrificing the full manifestation to establish a stable foothold, Vados realized with alarm. A persistent micro-breach that would slowly expand over time. How do we stop it? Naruto demanded, dispatching the last operator with a precisely targeted Rasengan. The Tier Mu, Saint be sealed completely from both sides simultaneously, Marcarita explained, her staff glowing brighter as she channeled more power into the containment lattice. Our efforts from this side must be matched by an equivalent force from within the breach, which is impossible without access to the prison dimension, Vados added grimly. Naruto studied the contracting tear, watching as the shadowy projection fought against the angel's containment with increasing desperation. Within his mindscape, Kurama stirred with sudden purpose. Kit, I remember this, the fox communicated urgently. The sealing technique used against dimensional intrusions. Our original purpose before the division. Images flowed from Kurama's awakening memories, complex sealing patterns designed specifically to close breaches between dimensions. To repel entities that existed beyond universal boundaries. Show me, Naruto replied internally, opening himself fully to the Biju's recovered knowledge. Without hesitation, he moved toward the tear, hands already forming seals unlike any used in traditional shinobi techniques, gestures that seemed to bend space around his fingers as he completed each position. Naruto, what are you doing? Hinata called in alarm. Trust me, he replied, continuing the sequence as he approached the containment lattice. Kurama remembers how to seal these breaches permanently. Marcarita's eyes widened in shock. Those are celestial sealing gestures, techniques lost for millions of years. How could he possibly? The Bijus recovered memories, Vados realized with dawning comprehension. They truly were guardians before their division. Naruto completed the sequence as he reached the edge of the Angel's containment lattice. I need to connect directly with the dimensional barrier, he told them. Lower your containment enough for me to make contact. The projection could break through, Marcarita warned. It won't have time, Naruto assured her with quiet confidence. After a moment's hesitation, both angels adjusted their containment field, creating an opening directly before Naruto while maintaining pressure on the projection within. Without hesitation, he thrust his right hand directly into the tear, making contact with the crimson energy of the dimensional barrier itself. Pain beyond description shot through his system as reality itself rejected his intrusion. Within the tear, the shadowy projection sensed his presence and lunged toward this new vulnerability, massive jaws forming from darkness to snap at his outstretched arm. Naruto! Hinata cried out, rushing forward only to be held back by Gaara's sand. Wait! The Kage commanded, his eyes fixed on Naruto's expression, not one of pain, but intense concentration. Within the tear, Naruto's consciousness expanded beyond physical limitations. He perceived the prison dimension directly, a twisted realm of perpetual twilight where massive chains of pure energy stretched across an endless void, binding something so vast it defied comprehension. At the chains, convergence point waited Moro, or rather, a fragment of him, a projection seeking escape through this tenuous connection. The entity noticed Naruto's awareness and recoiled in surprise. Impossible! It hissed in a voice that corroded reality around its edges. No mortal possesses perceptual range beyond dimensional barriers. Instead of responding, Naruto channeled celestial energy directly into the sealing technique, creating a counter-resonance that began closing the tear from within. The projection howled in fury, abandoning its attack on Naruto to desperately claw at the collapsing breach. In the physical world, Naruto's body began to glow with unprecedented intensity. The celestial energy, flowing through his system no longer manifested as separate blue light but had integrated with his golden chakra, creating a radiance that transcended normal visual spectrum. His hair lifted in an invisible breeze, and for a brief moment, a shadowy suggestion of wings formed behind him, not fully manifested but undeniably present. He's channeling true angelic power, Vados whispered, genuine awe in her voice. Not merely celestial energy, but the fundamental force of creation itself. The tear contracted rapidly, the projection's furious struggles growing more frantic as its connection to the physical dimension narrowed. With a final surge of power, Naruto completed the sealing technique, his fingers tracing a complex final gesture that resonated across multiple planes of existence simultaneously. The tear collapsed with a thunderclap of displaced energy, sending a shockwave across the mountainside that flattened trees for half a kilometer in all directions. Where the dimensional breach had been, nothing remained but a faint shimmer in the air, like heat rising from sun-baked stone. Naruto stood motionless for several seconds, his arms still outstretched, the glow gradually fading from his form. When he finally lowered his hand and turned to face the others, his eyes retained a subtle luminescence, the blue irises now containing pinpricks of light like distant stars. Naruto. Hinata approached cautiously, her Byakugan perceiving the profound changes in his energy system. He smiled reassuringly, though it couldn't quite mask his own astonishment at what had just happened. I'm okay. Better than okay, actually. I can feel everything. Vados and Marcarita exchanged significant glances, communicating volumes without words. You performed a perfect celestial seal, Marcarita stated, unable to completely hide her amazement. A technique known only to higher-ranking angels and the Grand Priest himself. Kurama showed me, Naruto explained simply. From his recovered memories. Not just showed you, Vados corrected, studying him with newfound intensity. Such techniques require fundamental understanding of cosmic principles beyond mere memorization. Yuko comprehended the underlying dimensional mechanics instinctively. Yugito approached, her Biju cloak now receded though her eyes still glowed with Matabi's influence. That power, it wasn't like anything I've ever sensed before. For a moment, you didn't feel mortal. The first true manifestation of angelic essence, Marcarita confirmed. Far earlier in the development process than should be possible. Naruto flexed his hand, still tingling from contact with raw dimensional energy. It felt natural, he admitted. Like remembering how to do something I'd done before, even though I know I haven't. Curiouser and curiouser, Vados murmured, circling him with analytical interest. Your progression defies all established patterns of celestial evolution. It's almost as if what? Naruto pressed when she didn't continue. As if you were designed for this transformation, she finished, her expression unreadable. Prepared by forces beyond current cosmic understanding. Before anyone could pursue this unsettling observation, Gaara called their attention to the defeated Null Council operators, now securely bound in his sand. What should be done with them? They possess knowledge we might find valuable. Indeed, Marcarita agreed, approaching the captured operatives with clinical detachment. Their recruitment across multiple universes suggests organizational abilities beyond what we initially assessed. The bound figures glared with a mixture of fear and defiance as the group surrounded them. Unlike the mercenaries from the previous encounter, these individuals displayed distinct non-human characteristics. One had scaled skin in iridescent patterns, another possessed 4 eyes arranged in diamond formation, while a third seemed to phase between solid and translucent states with each breath. Why target this location specifically? Naruto questioned the apparent leader, the gravity manipulator whose techniques had nearly crushed Hinata during the battle. The 4-armed humanoid laughed bitterly. You still don't understand what you've stumbled into, Resonant One. This mountain range contains 5 major nexus points forming a perfect pentagram. Activate all 5 simultaneously, and the dimensional barriers across this entire region would collapse, allowing Moro direct access to this dimension, Marcarita concluded. An ambitious plan, if suicidally reckless. Better Moro's chaos than the gods, sterile order, hissed the scaled operative. At least he offers change, evolution beyond stagnant cosmic hierarchies. Evolution through planetary consumption, Vados questioned with raised eyebrow. An interesting definition of progress. The gravity manipulator fixed his gaze on Naruto. You could join us, you know. Resonant Ones need not serve as Angel's puppets. Your power could reshape cosmic law itself. Give mortals voice in a hierarchy that has dismissed them as insignificant for billions of years. Despite himself, Naruto found the argument not entirely without merit. The cosmic structure described by Marcarita and Vados did seem fundamentally hierarchical, with mortals occupying the lowest tiers beneath gods and celestial beings who made decisions affecting trillions without consultation or consent. There are better ways to change systems than by unleashing planet-devouring entities, he replied finally. Ways don't sacrifice innocent lives for philosophical points. Naive, the operative sneered. The gods of destruction have erased entire civilizations on whims. Lord Beerus once destroyed half a solar system because its cuisine disappointed him. Is that system worth preserving? Naruto glanced at the angels, whose expressions revealed nothing. I didn't say the current system is perfect. But your solution would cause more suffering. Not less. A thoughtful response, Vados observed approvingly. Most Resonant Ones in history have embraced either blind loyalty to cosmic hierarchy or complete rebellion against it. Nuanced ethical consideration is uncommon. What happens to them now? Hinata asked, her expression troubled by the moral complexities of interdimensional politics. They violated multiple cosmic statutes by attempting unauthorized dimensional manipulation, Marcarita stated formally. By law, they should be remanded to the custody of Universe 7's God of Destruction for judgment. The captured operatives paled visibly at this pronouncement. However, she continued with unexpected flexibility, given the unusual circumstances and potential intelligence value. Temporary containment at your Nexus chamber might be justified while we consult higher authorities. Naruto nodded in agreement. We need to understand the full extent of their operations, how many Nexus points they've identified, their organizational structure, and what they know about Moro's prison. As they secured the prisoners for transportation, Hinata moved to Naruto's side, studying him with concern. Your chakra network has changed again, she observed quietly. The celestial pathways have fully integrated with your natural system. Is that good or bad? Neither. Just different. She hesitated, then added more softly. When you performed that sealing technique, for a moment you looked different. Not just the energy, but your physical form seemed to shift slightly. Naruto remembered the strange sensation. The momentary feeling of expansion beyond physical constraints, the shadowy suggestion of wings manifesting from his back. I felt it too, like I was becoming something else, just for an instant. The beginning of true transcendence, Vados commented, approaching them with unusual solemnity. The mortal form adapting to channel celestial essence at its purest level. It's a threshold few have ever crossed, and none so rapidly. Will it happen again? Naruto asked. Almost certainly, and with increasing frequency and duration as your resonance strengthens. Her expression turned thoughtful. The real question is how complete the transformation will become. Traditional celestial evolution takes millennia, but your accelerated progression suggests you might achieve in years what normally takes eons. The implications hung in the air between them, unspoken but profound. What exactly was he becoming? And what would it mean for his connections to the mortal world he called home? As if sensing his thoughts, Hinata took his hand, her touch grounding him in the present moment. Whatever comes next, your heart remains your own, she reminded him with quiet certainty. Power changes capability, not character. Naruto squeezed her hand gratefully, drawing strength from her unwavering faith in him. Yet questions lingered beneath the surface of his thoughts, questions about destiny and choice. About the nature of the power growing within him, and about the cosmic forces that seemed to have anticipated his emergence long before his birth. The return journey to the Nexus Chamber proceeded without incident, though Naruto noticed his perception continuing to evolve with each passing hour. The world around him now contained visible layers, not just physical matter but energy patterns, probability fields, and dimensional frequencies that shifted and flowed like ocean currents. Your visual processing has expanded to include quantum fluctuation bands, Marcarita observed as they traversed the impossible tunnel leading back to the chamber. Faster than expected, but consistent with your developmental curve. Is that why everything looks like it's breathing? Naruto asked, watching fascinated as solid rock walls seemed to inhale and exhale subtly, probabilities collapsing and expanding with each fluctuation. You're perceiving matter's natural state of quantum indeterminacy. Vados explained. Most beings experience reality as fixed and solid because their consciousness automatically filters out these fluctuations. Your awareness has expanded beyond those filters. In the main chamber, Tsunade, Shikamaru, and Hiashi awaited their return with evident relief. The prisoners were secured in a specially prepared containment area Gaara had created, with seals designed by Hiashi to suppress their various abilities. After debriefing the others on the confrontation and Naruto's unprecedented manifestation of angelic power, the grow-up broke into smaller conversations, Shikamaru interrogating the most cooperative prisoner, Hiashi and Marcarita discussing containment protocols, Tsunade examining Yugito for any aftereffects of channeling her Biju's power during dimensional exposure. Naruto found himself drawn to the central crystal lattice, which seemed to pulse in welcome as he approached. The structure had continued evolving during his absence, growing more complex and intricate with each passing day. Now it responded to his proximity, reconfiguring slightly to mirror the new integration patterns in his chakra network. It recognizes you, Vados noted, appearing beside him with characteristic silent grace. These crystals are semi-sentient. They evolve in response to celestial frequencies they encounter. Like it's learning from me while I learn from it, Naruto mused, watching the crystalline structure adjust and adapt. Precisely. A symbiotic relationship that accelerates development on both sides. Vados studied him with unusually serious eyes. You know, I've observed 17 resonant mortals throughout my existence. None progressed beyond preliminary harmonization before their physical forms failed. What made them different from me? That's what fascinates me, she admitted. By all conventional metrics, they were more suitable candidates, beings who had spent centuries in spiritual practice, whose energy systems were meticulously prepared through careful discipline. While I'm just a shinobi who happened to have the right frequency, Naruto concluded. That's just it. I don't believe this is happenstance at all. Vados tapped her staff thoughtfully against the floor. Your Biju connection explains some anomalies but not all. Your adaptation rate, instinctive understanding of celestial mechanics, natural integration patterns, these suggest deliberate design rather than cosmic coincidence. The implication sent a chill through Naruto despite the chamber's perfect temperature. You think someone planned for this to happen? For me specifically to develop this resonance. I think, Vados replied carefully, that cosmic history contains more mysteries than even angels fully comprehend. And that your emergence may be connected to events set in motion long before your world's current civilization existed. From across the chamber, Yugito approached, having concluded her examination with Tsunade. Matabi wants to speak with you, she announced without preamble. Says it's important, connected to what happened during the sealing. Naruto nodded, unsurprised. The Beej, Yu had been increasingly active since his resonance awakened, their recovered memories providing crucial insights at pivotal moments. We can establish a direct communication link through the crystal lattice, Vados suggested. Allow all three of you to converse simultaneously without the limitations of conventional mindscape connection. With Vados's guidance, they positioned themselves around a section of the crystal structure. The angel tapped her staff against specific nodes, causing the crystalline material to reconfigure into a triangular formation that connected their three positions. Focus on the center of the triangle, Vados instructed. The crystals will amplify and synchronize your consciousness, creating a shared perceptual field. As they concentrated, the space within the triangle seemed to deepen, becoming a window into somewhere else, a realm of twilight forests where massive trees reached toward an aurora-filled sky. Within this conjured landscape, two enormous figures materialized, Kurama and Matabi in their true forms, unbound by the constraints of their hosts' bodies. Welcome to the memory realm, Kurama greeted, his voice resonating with newfound depth and authority. What you see around us are fragments of our original consciousness, the world as it existed when we were still unified. Matabi, her body composed of living blue flame, stretched languidly before fixing Naruto with her mismatched eyes. When you performed the celestial sealing technique, it triggered a cascade of recovered memories, she explained, her voice a melodio. A spur that somehow conveyed ancient wisdom. We remember more of our purpose now, and more about entities like Moro. Tell me, Naruto encouraged, fascinated by this direct connection with the two tales. Before the division, we were created as guardians against a specific threat, beings called world eaters that existed between dimensions, Matabi continued. Moro was once a guardian like us, tasked with protecting Universe 3. But he discovered that consuming the very energy he was meant to safeguard increased his power exponentially. Kurama picked up the explanation. He began devouring entire worlds, absorbing their life energy until he grew powerful enough to challenge the cosmic hierarchy itself. It took the combined effort of three gods of destruction and their angel attendants to subdue him, and even then, they couldn't destroy him completely. Why not? Yugito asked. If he posed such a threat, why preserve him at all? Because his existence had become fundamental to universal balance. Matabi explained. He had absorbed so much cosmic energy that his complete destruction would have created a catastrophic void in the dimensional fabric. So they imprisoned him instead, Naruto concluded, in a dimension specifically constructed to contain his essence while allowing controlled energy dispersion, Kurama confirmed. But the seals were always meant to be temporary, a solution until a more permanent resolution could be developed. Something in the fox's tone caught Naruto's attention. You're saying they were waiting for something specific. Both Biju turned their massive heads toward him simultaneously. Not something, Matabi corrected softly. Someone. A being who could channel celestial energy in its purest form without transcending mortality completely, maintaining connection to both realms. A bridge between mortal and divine, Kurama added, his eyes fixed meaningfully on Naruto. Capable of implementing the final solution to entities like Moro. The implication struck Naruto with the force of physical impact. You're saying I was, what? Created for this purpose. Not created, Kurama qualified. Prepared for the possibility. Your bloodline, your circumstances, your connection to me, all aligned to maximize potential for celestial resonance while maintaining mortal grounding. That's, Naruto struggled to find words for the mixture of destiny and manipulation such a revelation suggested. Disturbing, Matabi acknowledged with surprising empathy. But not deterministic. The capacity was prepared, but your choices remain your own. Many potential vessels have existed throughout history, you are merely the first to actually achieve the resonance. Why now? Why me specifically? The Biju exchanged glances laden with ancient knowledge. Cosmic cycles, Kurama explained reluctantly. The prison dimensions were designed to last approximately n million years before requiring renewal. That time approaches. The Null Council didn't discover this by accident, they're capitalizing on a cosmic inevitability. And my role in all this? Naruto pressed, though he suspected he already knew the answer. To implement the permanent solution, Matabi confirmed. A technique that would transform world eaters like Moro into constructive rather than destructive forces within the cosmic equilibrium. But such a technique requires what neither gods nor angels possess, Kurama continued. Understanding of both mortality and divinity. Experienced from within rather than observed from without. The revelation settled over Naruto like a weight of cosmic proportions. His entire existence, perhaps even his ancestry back generate ions, had been subtly guided toward this moment, this capacity, this responsibility. Who orchestrated this? Yugito asked, her tone suggesting she shared Naruto's unease at such far-reaching manipulation. That memory remains fragmented, Matabi admitted. Beings who existed before the current hierarchy, perhaps even before Zeno himself. The first ones, who established the fundamental laws of reality. The shared mindscape began to flicker as the crystal lattice reached its synchronization limits. Before the connection faded, Kurama fixed Naruto with a meaningful gaze. Remember, Kit, prepared potential does not dictate required outcome. The capacity exists, but the choice of how to use it, or whether to use it at all, remains yours alone. The mindscape dissolved, returning them to the physical chamber where Vados waited with evident curiosity. You learned something significant, she observed, reading their expressions. You could say that, Naruto replied, his mind still processing the implications of what the Biju had revealed. It seems I'm part of a plan set in motion millions of years ago, a contingency for dealing with threats like Moro permanently. Vados nodded thoughtfully. That would explain many anomalies in your development pattern. The question becomes, will you accept the role you've been prepared for? I don't know yet, Naruto answered honestly. I need to understand more about what this permanent solution actually involves, and what it would mean for me. A wise response, Vados approved. Destiny is most dangerous when embraced without question. As the conversation concluded, Naruto noticed Hinata watching from across the chamber, her expression a complex mixture of concern and support. He moved to join her, drawn by the grounding presence she had always represented in his life. You heard? He asked. Enough, she confirmed. It's a lot to process. That's an understatement. He leaned against a crystal pillar, dimly feeling the weight of the day's events. Finding out your entire existence might be part of some cosmic plan created before your planet even formed. Not exactly what I expected from this training. Hinata studied him with those perceptive eyes that had always seen through his masks and defenses. Does it change who you are? What you believe? What matters to you? The question cut through the cosmic complexity to something essential. No, he realized with quiet certainty. Whatever I was prepared to be capable of, who I actually am, that's been shaped by my own choices, my own bonds. Then focus on that truth. She suggested simply. The capacity may have been arranged by forces beyond our comprehension, but what you do with that capacity, that remains yours to decide. Naruto smiled, feeling some of the tension leave his shoulders. When did you get so wise? I've always had excellent taste in who to believe in, she replied with a rare hint of playfulness. Their moment of connection was interrupted as Shikamaru approached with news from the prisoner interrogation. We have coordinates for 3 more nexus points they were planning to target, he reported. And something else, apparently. They've been monitoring your training progress through some kind of quantum entanglement technique. Meaning they know about the accelerated development of his celestial abilities, Marcarita concluded. Joining the conversation, and will likely adapt their strategies accordingly, Vados added. Which necessitates accelerating our training timeline further. Naruto nodded in understanding. The path forward was becoming clearer, if no less daunting. Whatever cosmic design had prepared him for celestial resonance, the immediate challenges required his full attention. Tomorrow we begin Phase 2. He decided. No more separate approaches, we combine Marcarita's foundational stability with Vados's integration techniques. And I want to start developing practical cations, combat techniques that blend shinobi traditions with celestial energy. Both angels considered this proposal with evident interest. An integrated curriculum would be unorthodox, Marcarita admitted. But these circumstances are unprecedented in cosmic history. I find myself increasingly amenable to unorthodox approaches where you're concerned, Vados agreed with a smile that suggested growing professional respect. As night fell in the world above, the Nexus chamber settled into relative quiet. The prisoners were secured, watches established, and plans made for expanded training beginning at dawn. Naruto found himself unable to sleep despite physical exhaustion, his mind too active with revelations and possibilities. He wandered to a secluded corner of the chamber where a all pool of liquid crystal offered perfect reflection. In its mirror-like surface, he studied his own appearance, searching for signs of the transformation that had briefly manifested during the sealing technique. Outwardly, he appeared unchanged. The same blue eyes, though now containing subtle stellar pinpricks when caught in certain light. The same features, perhaps slightly more defined. The human form that had carried him through 23 years of life. Yet inwardly, he knew fundamental changes were occurring with each passing day. The celestial energy had fully integrated with his chakra network, creating a hybrid system unprecedented in cosmic history. His perception continued to expand beyond normal sensory limitations. And for one brief, transcendent moment, he had led power reserved for angels themselves. What am I becoming? He whispered to the reflection. As if in answer, a flicker of blue-white light pulsed beneath his skin, tracing patterns like circular Y throughout his body before fading back to normal appearance. The crystal pool rippled in response, and for an instant, his reflection showed something else, a form of pure light with gossamer wings extending from shoulders to infinity. Eyes containing galaxies, existence unconstrained by physical limitations. Then it was gone, leaving only his familiar human reflection staring back with wide, startled eyes. Across the chamber, both angels paused in their respective activities, heads tilting slightly as if sensing the momentary energy fluctuation. They exchanged glances laden with meaning before returning to their tasks without comment. Outside in the physical world, stars wheeled across the night sky in patterns established at the dawn of creation. Yet beneath their familiar light, subtle changes were occurring, reality itself adjusting to accommodate something new emerging within its fabric, something neither fully mortal nor completely divine. A bridge between worlds, awakening to possibilities beyond imagination. Chapter 3 End. The End. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.